I'm Evan Roberts, and
I'm Yasha Rukanza Kanza.
we're here talking about why the Biden administration's student loan forgiveness program was a good thing. So, first off, what is the student debt crisis? Over the last 20 years, student loan debt has more than doubled. It's gone from nearly $500 billion to $1.75 trillion in accumulated debt to students. Over these years, student debt has obviously increased exponentially, but wages just have not kept up. The National College Board says that tuition has increased anywhere from a range of 90 to 150% in the last 30 years, while median pay has only increased 9% in the same time. Obviously, a big difference there. Pell Grants are the biggest source of federal aid when it comes to these loans. Pell Grants are given to nearly 40% of all students that need to take out loans and go to college. And these federal grants haven't changed at all either. They used to account for nearly 80% of loans, and now they can barely cover 29%. So it's obviously really important because these grants are given to almost half of all students. And then the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center has surveyed students across the country, and they have found that 48% of students that don't go to college do so because of its increasing cost, and that 47% of people say that they are not willing to go into debt for school. So obviously, these student debts are preventing a higher education in our country.
And this has led to a lot of difficulty for students who are caught in debt, as well as creating a national dilemma on how this can be handled. And the Biden administration has made this bold move of paying off student debts, or rather forgiving student debts to a certain number of students. And many have questioned the legitimacy of this move by President Biden on whether or not he has the authority or whether it is constitutionally protected. And in the U.S. Code, Section 20, subsection 10A2, subsection A, number 6, we find the HEROES Act, which is also known as the Higher Education Relief Opportunities for Students Act of 2003. And this stipulates that the President may instruct the Secretary of Education, referred to in the Act as the Secretary, to essentially waive or modify students' financial responsibilities to pay their debts. And thus read, it says, notwithstanding any other provision of law, unless enacted with specific reference to this section, the Secretary may waive or modify any statutory or regulatory provision applicable to the student financial assistance programs under Title IV of the HEA, as the Secretary deems necessary in connection with the war or other military operation or national emergency, to provide the waivers or modifications authorized by the President. So what this essentially means is that the President may, with or without the approval of Congress, make this provision. And now, because of the vast impacts COVID-19 has, it was classified a national emergency, having social, economic, and even a whole lot of other effects, the loss of life and disaster and all these things. And so this stamps the legitimacy of this act, and having established that, we shall see who the beneficiaries of this debt are. A demographic analysis of federal student loan borrowers revealed disparities in the number of people who take government loans to finance their education. The majority of borrowers are people of color, followed by white Americans, a mixed group, and lastly, Hispanics or Latinos. Among the Black Americans, 86.6 of them take federal loans, which average an amount of $44,880, while 59.9% of whites accrue the same, averaging $40,170. Hispanics and Latinos are the lowest group, borrowing an average of $30,890. And due to the inequalities that exist in income, it becomes increasingly difficult to repay the loans live sustainably for Blacks and Latinos, while whites who have the higher chance of meeting their financial obligations are able to repay their debts. So the historical differences are perpetuated by the social injustices that limited the economic development of all races and thus created an income gap amongst all Americans. And Blacks and Latinos are the most affected. According to statistics on the median weekly income by race, the highest paid are the Asian Americans, which receive $1,384 per week, followed by whites who receive $1,030 per week, and then Blacks who receive $805 per week, and the lowest group is the Latino or Hispanics who receive $799 per week. And this income gap makes it difficult for recipients from the bottom two to pay back as they make less money. The gap is more extensive as we look at Black and Hispanic women who earn substantially less compared to their male counterparts. Now, what is the significance of the salary information? This helps to establish the difference between wealth and income. Due to the economic advantage white Americans have and the historical benefits they acquired, they have a larger wealth pool. They have access to intergenerational wealth, which increases their network and generational wealth. While they may accrue debt, they have more assets and financial resources to pay it back, while Blacks and Hispanics, on the other hand, are not endowed with such and have to pay their debt from their income. And while they may have good salaries, income does not always total wealth, and they don't have the advantage of years of saving and asset generation that their progenitors engaged in. As a result, of all student loan borrowers, about 21% of Blacks are more likely to default on their repayments compared to only about 4% of the white borrowers who also engage in the same activity. So the question is, how does the forgiveness of debt address inequality? Essentially, people who borrow beyond the confines of race are the people who need the money. Even though the majority of borrowers are predominantly Black or Hispanic, and debt largely impacts their lives in a number of ways. By accruing student debt, it means that they cannot save or make down payments as they are in debt. The interest rates are arbitrary and often trap the recipients in a financial cycle that continues for years before they are able to pay up. Debt increases their debt-to-income ratio, something which negatively affects their credit score and ability to secure mortgages for housing. The cost of credit over students' lives increases as commodities, the standard of living, and other necessities also increase in cost. And this limits their ability to pay back the money and ultimately results in a default. Moreover, the ever-increasing cost of housing guarantees the entrapment of students in financial arrears, which they cannot escape with their varying and limited income. Thus, it perpetuates more inequality and creates this vicious cycle where more and more recipients are stuck in debt. Forgiveness evens the playing field, and it helps the students to focus on other aspects of life like self-actualization and addressing other elements which increase their opportunities to engage in other worthwhile financial endeavors.
So what is the Biden administration's forgiveness plan? in general, it boosts the amount that can be received from Pell Grants, and it gives money to those that can't get the grants. There are 3 parts of the plan. Part 1 states, its title is, it provides targeted debt relief to address the financial harms of the pandemic, fulfilling the presidential's campaign commitment. It increases the Pell Grants recipients' relief up to $20,000 as opposed to this year's maximum of just over $6,000. And it also gives up to $10,000 of relief for non-recipients of the Pell Grants. You do have to qualify for it by making less than $125,000 per year or $250,000 per year if you are a married couple, which helps decrease the wealth gap. Part 2 makes the student loan system more manageable for current and future borrowers. What it does is it cuts the monthly payments in half for undergrads, and which is a decrease of over $1,000 per month for most students. And secondly, students that work for nonprofits, military, or government jobs will get credit towards their loans. The third part protects future students and taxpayers by reducing the cost of college and holding schools accountable when they hike up prices. This part is kind of a hope, a hypothetical. It's not really an official thing yet. The Biden administration plans and hopes to make the Pell Grant increase permanent, and then he also promises to put pressure on universities to lower their costs. What that means exactly is not clear. The U.S. Census Bureau says that a $10,000 reduction in debt would wipe away an entire 29% of debts that students have. That's 29% of all students with debt-free now. 43 million borrowers would be positively impacted by the plan, and 90% of relief would end up going to lower class students, any students making less than $70,000 a year. So in summary, the student loan forgiveness is something that will benefit everyone all around and will work to decrease the wealth and race gap along with helping out economically weak students. It sets up millions of students for a brighter future and gives them a head start on their own economic lives, and makes education more readily available for everyone in the future.
Again, to close, student debt forgiveness is a small step in addressing the social injustices created by history and affords all people a chance to live the American dream, benefit from their college degree without an arbitrary loan limiting their economic potential, and it overall is beneficial to all Americans because it brings the greatest good and happiness to those who need it the most.
Thank you.